Evening everybody, May 15th, evening time. So just thought I'd show you what I've been doing on the strawberry beds. This is one of my strawberry beds here. Just been putting some barley straw. As you can see, they're starting to appear now, the strawberries. So thought it was best to put some actual barley straw underneath the beds, because last year with all the rain that we had, and it's rained quite heavily over the last few days, found it best to try and stop the fruit from rotting as it did last year. I had to catch some of it on the clay soils. It really does give a nice flavour. This is a bit of a close-up, and this is why I decided to put the barley straw on last night. And as you can see, they're well on the way, and only had these in for a couple of years, these strawberry plants, so I'm quite pleased really with how it's going on this year, because it's been quite tough with the winds and storms, etc. One set of Stuttgarter onions that have been in since mid-April, and I tried an experiment with comfrey. Basically I cut comfrey, put it into a bucket, filled it with water, and I let it sort of decompose for a good 2 to 3 weeks, and I've put that on this Stuttgarter, and when I've compared it to other Stuttgarter onions, it really has given them a good boost for the growth. So I've actually got 2 more buckets of it, on old poultry manure pellet buckets over there, coming on for other projects to do with fertilising things on the allotment. The herb garden's a bit better than it was last year. I've got Roman chamomile, and I've also got my self-heal vervain there. There's also some celery, a celery plant there, and next to that we've got some parsley, Mexican orange blossom, and at the back there a bay tree with some blackberries. And coming back, I've got some lavender, rosemary and mint there, and more rosemary at the back there, some sage, so a bay tree there, and yet more lavender. And of course I love this stuff here. We've got elder, and at the back of the plot, this tree, we fed it when we first came down, and really has got a profusion of elder flowers, so I'm looking forward to making some elderflower cordial from that too. Down to the work I've done with the watercolour paintbrushes and cross-pollinating plum trees. This dwarf rootstock plum tree should be giving me a very decent crop this year. I've kept spraying it with the milk, water, bicarb detergent. Over winter they got garlic sprays against the canker. I only fertilise them over the winter period with a high potassium bloodfish and bone fertiliser. I don't fertilise again, because apparently if you over fertilise these trees, it all goes into branch and leaf, not into blossom and fruit. And also it's been pruned to keep it down to just a little bit taller than myself, but no taller, and I've been working on some of these lower branches and picking them out as well. This is one of my dessert pears. Very pleased with these this year. They were absolutely riddled with pear rust, and ants had started to come up them. Treated them of course with the solution of the milk, the bicarb detergent, and garlic spray separately. And I've also picked off any affected leaves, and because I keep these trees small, no more than sort of 6 feet high, I'm able to get a grip on them. So basically I'm able to see if ants are on the trees, and able to treat them straight away and try and pick off leaves. I don't pick off every affected leaf, because they're only slightly infected. I spray them and leave them, because obviously trees need the leaves in order to make the sugars and help the fruits to develop as they transport the sugars around. The red currant, again, the outermost leaves, the top leaves, were heavily attacked by airborne spores. I removed all the effective leaves, bagged them and took them off the allotment, binned them, and basically these have done very well this year. They were pruned to an open goblet shape, and I basically made sure they're not too high, so basically that's kept them under check and kept them under control. As you can see, there's a couple of leaves there that's affected. I should be taking them off, and keeping an eye on any airborne disease that's come their way. But I'm quite pleased with how these are going. Wonder if anyone else has got these on their allotments, because it's my goji. Second year, the first year I've only got a handful of berries on them. Pruned them back very heavily over winter, fed them. Last year I had to spray again with the milk spray because it got like a mildew infection. This year it looks much more healthy. I don't really know when they flower or if I'm going to have any luck this year. I know people grow them as a hedge and even as far north as Scotland, but curious to know what people have to say. Tayberries seem to have done very well this year, better than last year, and they've got some stakes to support them, and they're in flower at the moment, and they seem to spread well. This was all from one original parent plant, and I did take some cuttings and put it around the rest of the allotment, around the edge of the allotment, and it seems to really like it down here, so looking forward to a few tayberries. The raspberries, I did an experiment. These are summer fruiting raspberries. The first half of them, I pruned them quite heavily after the summer crop. The second half, not so much, to see how they would affect the crop. And these are now just about to burst into flower. And also, on a little visit to a village, I noticed that one of the shops was selling raspberry leaf tea, and they put it in with apple. So I thought I'd look up myself to see if there's a recipe. I don't know whether has anyone else tried it. How about that raspberry leaf tea with apple? Wonder if you had a bit of, a bit of spice to it, a bit of cinnamon or something. Perhaps I'll experiment. Champagne rhubarb has still got some stalks ready for harvesting, but I'm going easy this year and I've removed any flowering heads. So I've really got till sort of like well, the end of this month, which is May, and maybe a little bit into June, and then I believe that's about it for rhubarb. I noticed last year when I started to pull some stalks a bit later that they do get very stringy. My red discovery apple, which is a pollination partner for the next tree along, which is a Bramley, has sort of come out to flower. This one was heavily infected last year with canker and fungus. I thought I'd nearly lost it, but I sprayed it, treated it, pruned it, particularly on the lower branches, got rid of the ants on it with the bicarb and the garlic and etc. And now it's sprung back to life this year, and on neighbouring plots there's quite a few people who've got these crab apples, and apparently crab apples will pollinate this, because it's a bit late, because my other tree has already set fruit, which is the Bramley, and then the one next to it. So this one lagged behind because of disease, but it has popped back, so don't give up on your fruit trees. First year I'm having a go at doing some potatoes in grow bags, 40 litre grow bags. You get 2 for £2 from Wilko's. Other shops sell them similar price, about £1 each, obviously, from your pound shops. And basically you don't totally fill them, you use the trench system. So basically you put about 10 centimetres of compost in, then you put your potatoes in, you take off a lot of the eyes, only leaving a couple of the shoots going up, and then you just cover them. When they start coming through again, you keep earthing up as you would do if you plant them in the soil. I found this solution might work for me. I've seen other people's videos growing them in glass houses, and so I'm hoping for success with these red Desirées. Last year's Swiss Chard just keeps coming and coming. My guinea pigs absolutely love this stuff, and of course you can use it in your cooking. And I never thought it would be so successful, but obviously it's one to try if you haven't already. These are my turbo onions. They were planted about a week later than the Stuttgarter, and probably not quite as vigorous, but I'm quite pleased, because other ones I planted last year have not had this sort of success. I planted some broad beans in mid-April, marked out a square, and this has also been treated with lime and some gypsum under advice from other people. I also put some compost and dug it in as much as I could, so I tried to prepare it, being in mind this plot has only been worked properly since I've had it. Previous to that it wasn't really worked for a long time, and they've come up, so I'm quite pleased with these broad beans. Some of them are a bit slow to come up on the far side of it, but going along the roads, if I just pan you along there slowly, you can see I've had some success with them. Here we go. So I'm quite pleased with that for me on my early days of a barley straw underneath in flower. And this particular area of ground was my sort of like pestilence area, where there was a lot of eelworms and all sorts of pests and old potatoes which I had to dig up when I originally took the plot on. But again, strawberries have taken very well to this. I did an experiment down here with some Jerusalem artichoke, but unfortunately I can't stand the stuff, so I've replaced it with strawberries and soft fruits, such as red currants, as you can see, some black currants at the back, and amongst the strawberries here, they've done very well. And this is one of the damsons that I grew from seed, from a plant which I saw on the river. It had chucked a load of old rotten damsons out. This now must be, I would say, at least 3 years old, grown from seed. And I put the seed in the freezer for nearly a year, took it out, boiled it up a little bit in some boiling water to shock it, and then planted it out in a tub, in a little pot, and it sprung up. This is the third lot of strawberries, which was in between some insulated, well, this is from an old shed which basically had polyfoam insulation on it, and it was put into a sort of a bed area, a lowered bed rather than a raised bed, if you like. And these sort of low plants like strawberry seem to like these beds, and I've not put any straw underneath these. It will get bone dry when there's a bit of a drought on. I just gave them a light soaking. Basically, these, I had to put fertiliser. I've used chicken manure on these ones earlier on over the winter. This is a Morello cherry on a dwarf rootstock, and I've put another one next to it which is a Stella cherry. The birds do love these ones, so I've noticed some people around do have their nets over these ones. I'll leave this one to see how I get along with it. I don't really at the moment, it's, you know, there's a lot of nestlings in at the moment, so I'm a bit wary about netting trees. You know, there's a lot of birds that are feeding their chicks, but I'll have to see how I get on with the crop. It seems quite healthy, this tree, and it's set fruit. Again, it's one where I went round with a watercolour brush, and I went cross-pollinating a number of cherries. I've grown some from seed. I'm a bit scared of those ones. I have to look them up, because they can grow to, like, you know, 30 feet, but these are dwarf rootstock. At the end of the soft fruit here, I've got 3 sets of white currant plants, and then then you come into your black currants, and these have done extremely well along here. This gets a lot of exposure along here. When the wind swings to the north and east, it's very bitter here near the River Trent, but basically these have stood up to that. I noticed when I first took the plot there was one really old black currant plant right on the back of it, which people tell me could have been here for decades, even, you know, maybe 60-70 years. So I knew that they'd grow on this side. Never knew how well they'd grow. These have been absolutely superb, and pruned them correctly, and I'm looking forward to a nice healthy crop. This is the rhubarb bed, and I propagated this from crowns when I first took over the plot. And to me, looking up, I've got some Timperley early and some Victoria here, as well as some Glassons perpetual. So at the edge of this, of course, I've got some blackberries, and I've got these from my garden, so they're wild local Nottinghamshire blackberries. So all along here is a rhubarb bed. Again, I'm using chicken manure and feeding this, and cutting up any flowers that come from this. And I've had some rhubarb recently from this, been very pleased, more pleased than I have been from previous years. So over the next few weeks my plans are to plant out some dwarf beans, some kale and some leeks, and I'm preparing the beds and having them ready for that. And also last night I just sowed some chamomile in order to try and make some chamomile tea from the dried petals, because I've used the Roman chamomile, but apparently that's much more potent, that's much more soporific, i.e. to help you sleep at night time. So I thought I'd try some more of the standard chamomile tea and see how I get on. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Here's a nice picture of some Bramley apples that have set fruit. These are from just down the road. The parent plant grew in Victorian times, a little village down the road called Southwell or Southall, however you want to call it. But there you go, does very well here, not too far away from where it first came from. Beautiful tree. See you soon everybody, keep you updated as the blackbird sings you out.